Alrighty. So this is a response video to Jimmy from the Grapevine. I want to make it so brief because I can talk forever. As well as if you hear background sound, the radio's on, as well as I'm trying to make apple pie from scratch. So bear with me. So when it comes to the Grapevine, I've been an avid viewer since the beginning, before they even had 10,000 followers. I've been a watcher when y'all had old girl had that like viral clip of her opinion on what's his face, Carrot Gold. I make black people music, but I'm not really black. That one. Before old girl went full blown ADOS. Yes, I was watching even before then, right? And I know the commenter, Jimmy. Jimmy has had interesting views on different topics of the round table. And a lot of times I do not agree with Jimmy. Jimmy reminds me of Carl, which reminds me of another guy that you used to have who was muscled down, who doesn't been a part of the show anymore. But nonetheless, like, it's interesting that I agree with Jimmy because I think he is more right than he is wrong. And of course, I'm speaking on the episode of discussing the Haitian migration down at the border, different Haitians, and I think even a African American guy talked about their opinions. Now, I like to read the comments just like every other viewer who watches YouTube videos. So I heard comments, or heard in quotations, read comments, people discussing Jimmy punching down. So then I had to watch the video. Made it through the video. It was so hard because I just wanted to like jump in and discuss what it was discussing on the table, but I was not there, and I was trying to reserve my opinion for the end. And now that it is the end, this is my opinion. As full disclosure, I am Haitian American, I am first generation, and I am a woman. So there's that. And a millennial. I agree with Jimmy in regards to black bourgeoisie class.
I take a different perspective on the situation. It's like, I get it. Migrants get caught, crossing over illegally. They get a lot of pushback. It's what went on has been going on forever. It's been going on since the first illegal migrants were hitting the shores from Haiti since the late 70s. This is normal. We got it on film now. People are politicizing it and whatnot. I was more upset at the fact that there's still so many people sort of leaving Haiti. Like, if and my family's is also guilty of this as well. If you look at the Haitians in New York, if you look at the Haitians in Boston and Miami, all the great things they were able to do in this country, how successful they are, how intelligent they are, you'll find that one of Haiti's biggest issues is the people that would have otherwise been civically engaged, would have been running businesses and paying taxes, would have been running for office. They all exist in America and Canada right now. Mm-hmm. And so we have a large mass of people that, when faced with challenges in Haiti, abandon them. And so they continue to persist and grow in the country. And so when I see all of these people at the border still leaving, full disclosure, man, for the last year and a half, I've been sending money through Western Union to pay for funerals, man. Now, I've been burying people that I know that live in areas that are super gang infested. My family's been in politics for a very long time. And so I've been burying people in Haiti, people that refuse to leave, right? Want progress, for the country. They're outnumbered by people that don't have the best intentions. And some of them are dead now, right? And they could have left, as some of the people in Haiti know, that when you're getting paid in US dollars, you go to the US embassy, you can get a tourist visa and show that you're making money. You're not, a risk to visit. So they could have left, they didn't. And I'm sort of speaking for them and saying that I'm upset because I feel like these people are dying for nothing. Most of the people they're fighting for don't even want to be there. They want to be in Miami. And so when would that stop? Right? That's just my position on this.
Thank you, Jimmy.
I want to say one more thing. Yes, Haiti is a Black country, but if you Google the most powerful families in Haiti or the richest powerful people in Haiti, you will see a very different face. And that should tell you a lot in terms of.
And what's that face? What's that face you're describing, Teresa?
It's not a Black face.
It's not a Black face.
Can I comment on that? Period, Teresa. Let them know.
Can I comment on that?
Give me super fast, and I gotta go to Kathleen.
All right. Even though there are a lot of light-skinned faces, first family I know is Bijou. There are a lot of light-skinned families, but if you know how Haiti's structured, especially when you're talking about kidnappings and extortion, it's the Black political class that's allowing these people to operate, and they're kicking back lots of money to even survive in the country. So at the end of the day, it's Black people at the top.
Not letting
that's not
you
true.
have to be very careful with what you say. First of all, it's not light-skinned faces. They are not Black, period. Number two, they're not letting them. They are being forced to do that. Be very careful with that. They are being forced to do that. Do you not see what just happened to Jovenel in July? They are being forced to do that. There's something that happens when you don't fall into line.
Yeah, so I just wanted to address the idea of performative leadership, right? So I have this uncle. He passed recently. His name was Danny Toussaint, and for those who are grown up in Haiti, he was senator of the West Department, so Port-au-Prince, basically one of the more powerful senators because that's one of the biggest, districts and departments in Haiti, right? And when he was senator, there was a lot of drug trafficking going on. And so the DEA was very active in Haiti. FBI was very active, and they would always come to his office and want access to him 24/7. They pushed him around because, Aristide's administration had a very close relationship with the Clinton administration. So these guys were just running around Haiti, thought they owned the place. And my uncle didn't want to play ball. These guys wanted access to citizens that they didn't, they were Americans. You couldn't sort of supersede or override what Haitians' legal system and policing system was, and he told him to fuck off, and he paid for that by being barred entry into America, right? And so he flew to Miami because they didn't let him through. And the thing is this: he accepted it because a lot of his money and stuff was in Haiti anyway. So he couldn't go to America, he couldn't go to Canada. They took his visa away. Fine. Now the leaders that they can influence have money in America, houses in America, their kids are going to schools in America, and that is how they're manipulated. So even though you're right that there is performative, leaders, it isn't without these countries having leverage over them because their money's stuck in these countries. So you do have a mix, guys that don't care what Americans are talking about because all their stuff is in Haiti, and guys that do care.
Of course, I'm not the first person to say this. We've been talking about Black bourgeoisie in America and just throughout the African diaspora ever since Black people started fighting back against imperialism, colonization, even as back as the Haitian Revolution, and even for African Americans as back as Reconstruction after the Civil War. So needless to say, we've always had a discussion of what is the true destiny for Black people, whether we're talking about African Americans, Haitians, Nigerians, whatever. Black people in general, what is our destination? And there's always been these class of Blacks who have always been in between the hierarchy of whiteness and everyday Black people. There's always been this mulat class, this bourgeoisie class. And throughout the discussion about Haiti and the different events in Haiti and political figures and geopolitics and all that jazz, Jimmy made a great point that I feel like a lot of the guests on the panel overlooked because there's a common interest in just saying Black and white, and yes, in racial terms, and I'll get into it later on in this video, but it was just easier to dismiss Black people don't really have power even when they're working for imperialist class, and that's bullshit. We see this is bullshit when we saw Obama run his presidential campaign for 8 years. What did Black people get out of it besides a slogan and Black representation in the White House? What did that do for everyday normal Black people? Absolutely nothing. If anything, it set us back than it did forward, right? So people to say, well, he was just a puppet. Well, he was a big enough political powerhouse to set bombs on Somalia. Obama's Blackness is not something that he cherishes. It's just something that's just parsley on top of the pasta. It's just for decorations. This is a biracial man raised by a white woman in Kansas. His Kenyan father did not raise him. So he doesn't have black roots. He doesn't have African roots. So it was no problem for him to bomb his cousins. Because if his father is Kenyan, which would mean Obama's half Kenyan, then that would mean his neighbors of Kenya is Somalia. So you bombing your cousins. And of course you wouldn't care if you're not aligned, if there's no type of solidarity, if there's no type of understanding or empathy. So to say that, well, black people, in this case, Haitians in Haiti and political power and whatnot, oh, they have certain powers, but it's the Western powers, it's the powers that be. And someone made a really good point. I think it was Miss, damn, I'm gonna forget your name. Woo! But it's okay, because in the video you forgot other Haitian political names, and I'm not gonna hold you for not remembering Toussaint Louverture's name, so don't hold me for this. But nonetheless, she made a good point saying that
when you look back at the history, when France signed that document in 1825, yes, Boyer signed that. When they gave us that document, Boyer signed that. But you know what? He was able to do that because when you go back 5 years before then, by 1820, we lost our first king. Haiti had a king. Henri Christophe was our king. So you have 1804, we free ourselves. And then you have oh Lord, not Jean-Jacques Dessalines. Who was before Jean-Jacques? Who was the one that got extradited to France, y'all? My bad. Ooh, I'm so embarrassed.
My ancestor, Toussaint Louverture.
Toussaint Louverture. He was right. So when he was sent to France, Lord have mercy, Haitians gonna drag me for that. When he was sent to France, you have Jean-Jacques Dessalines, who was his right-hand man. But you had Jean-Jacques, you had Henri Christophe, and then you had Alexandre Pétion. They both teamed up and got him assassinated in the capital because they all had different views of how to run the country. So then you have Henri Christophe, who goes to the north. You have Pétion, who's at the south. You have Henri Christophe, who's king. You have Pétion, who is president. You have a civil war going on. So you have the north and the south fighting. As the south gains on the north, you have Henri Christophe, who kills himself, right? Mm-hmm. But when he killed himself, the North was prospering in a way that was the vision for the country. His whole economic system was bringing, it was strengthening the country. A lot of Haitians weren't for it, but it was strengthening the country. So then now you have him dying, then you have Alexandre Pétion coming, right? And then fast forward, I forget how he passed away, but then fast forward by 1820, you have both of them dead. So why am I bringing this up? Because there's always been constant discord. And whenever there's constant discord and there's constant division, that fire that we had, it's gone. Mm-hmm. And that gives way for white people, for the French to come back in. They've been spinning the block. They've been spinning the block and they see all the division. So they're able to come back and say, yeah, we see what's going on. Now our army is stronger than yours. Mm-hmm. Y'all ain't got the ammunition that we have. You have no choice but to sign this, and you ain't got no unity. And ever since then, I feel like that's been history repeating itself in Haiti. Fast forward to 1915, when you have the Banana Wars, when you have the US invading Haiti and saying, oh, we're gonna send investors to come invest and buy the only national bank in Haiti. At the time, we had a dictator. His name was oh my God, I wrote it down somewhere.
President Sam.
Right.
Villebon Guillaume Sam.
Kunya, we have him, right? At the time, there were all these Germans in Haiti. So all these non-Haitians are always able to come on the island. You got Germans, you got Arabs, you got Syrians, you got all these people who are able to come on the island and take over the economy. And so now they're becoming a bigger threat to the United States. So now the United States is like, all right, we're going to invade you. And not only have we enforced you to pay this debt to France, now we're going to buy your bank, which makes your economy our economy. We can control your economy. And not just that, you're going to pay our debt too. We got debt. Y'all going to pay it too. What choice do we have? We ain't got the ammunition that they got. We ain't got the army that they got. We ain't got the unity that they got. And so that's when that fire dies. The fire dies because there's no unity. We used to have one vision. That vision is gone. And that's what happens, because there's always somebody leaving the door open to side with the whites because it benefits them, instead of them looking at the entire country to say, no, this is what's best for the entire country. Instead of that, no, I'm going to leave the door open and I'm going to be able to buy my mansion in Miami. I'm going to be able to buy my house in New York. The rest of y'all do what y'all got to do. But me and my family, we're good.
There was a lot of infighting. And that's the point that I really want to hammer in this video. It's the divisiveness of the powers that be that keeps us all fucked. And I'm not just talking about Haitians or Haitian Americans or even the Black African diaspora. I'm talking about all groups of people. This infighting is what gets nothing done, but it always works for the interest of the corporate elites. We see this all the time. To be free, to be a free Haitian would be to acknowledge the hardships, the turmoil, the oppression, the terrorism of imperialism and colonization. Not only is Haiti the first Black independent nation, but Christopher Columbus came to Hispaniola. Hispaniola is Haiti and the Dominican Republic before the invisible line of division. Because Haiti and Dominican Republic is literally one nation. It's literally one island. It's an invisible division between the two based on who colonizer at this time did this and had this belief, and you carried on the belief. Y'all are cousins. No different than Kenya and Somalia being cousins, but Obama still bombed Somalia. No different than Dominicans hating Haitians and Haitians having not so good opinions about Dominican Republic, but y'all are technically cousins. It's the division. And taking it back to the political class of Haiti, you cannot say, oh, they don't have real powers because they're puppets. This is a hierarchy. We live in systems of hierarchy, whether we're talking about man, woman, child, or Christian version or religious version, God, man, woman, child, master, slave, teacher, student. We live in hierarchies. So yeah, the bourgeoisie Black class may not be the white capitalist class of Jeff Bezos, but they have more power and more leverage than the everyday commoner Black person. Hence that why they terrorize the everyday average Black person, whether we're talking about Baby Duck and Papa Duck, or whether we're talking about on a music industry landscape, Diddy didn't have to screw over his artists, but he did it because he wanted to. Just like Jay-Z, I'm past kneeling. I'm a businessman. The Black bourgeoisie class has been used and continue to use on their own free will to subjugate other Blacks. And it's not just the Mulak class, it's the bourgeoisie class. Because they're okay with oppressing other Blacks, if that means that they get to be in a higher rung of the hierarchy above the other Black class. So I do want to agree with Jimmy on that, and I do agree, and I do want to put that point out there. This mentality of, oh, Black people can't do no wrong because they're oppressed, and even when they do us wrong, we should automatically forgive them because they're Black, is bullshit. This mentality is this idea that like Black people are benevolent, and if it wasn't for imperialism, we wouldn't be where we're at, is bullshit. Historically recorded bullshit. Like there were, taking it back, African kings and chiefmen who knew the fate of Africans on those boats and still sold other tribes. That's intent. That's free will. So when we discuss the hardships of Black people, we're talking about Haitians, African Americans, whatever. And it doesn't even have to be Black class. It could just be any groups of people. When we're talking about oppression, we have to talk about intent and free will. Because oftentimes, especially in this capitalist system that we live in, our morality is always under scrutiny from outside society and us judging ourselves. Oftentimes we are in an energy of trying to quote unquote make it and still keep our morality at the same time. So to have the mentality that, oh, well, Blacks can't be racist, or Blacks can't be terrorists, or Blacks can't be on the sides of imperialism because they're Black, because they're not Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk or Bill Gates. It's bullshit. And when you keep on to that mentality, you can't see the global agenda, which is world domination. Like, duh, like it's world domination. This is why it's copy and paste any country that you go to. Yes, the global south, but like literally any country that you go to, there's this subjugation, there's this hierarchy thing. Especially in modern day society, quote unquote Western society, civilized society, there's this hierarchy thing. And yes, the black bourgeoisies take advantage of that. They may aim to be the next Bill Gates, as Beyonce has let us know that she might be the next female Bill Gates. They aim to be that, but they're okay if they never achieve that because they don't want to be you, the everyday average black person. And that's true tea. So what Jimmy was talking about, he was legit about that. We cannot just brush that over. We cannot just brush the fact that there are black people who actively work against other black people. And when we see that and we call that out, this is how we don't get caught up in identity politics. This is how we don't vote for the next Obama 2.0. It's not good enough that you're just black. You have to have the morality. You have to have the political consciousness. You have to have a racial consciousness. You have to have a consciousness of we, the collective. We have to understand class dynamics, racial dynamics, this hierarchy of things dynamics, hierarchy of needs, and who are the ones who take advantage of that. There was a woman on the panel. She talked about how women or people in general have to wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning just to walk miles, just to find if they can eat something for the day.
I just want to very quickly say there is a difference between real power and performative power. And there's a lot of black people, like Jimmy was saying, in Haiti that seemingly looks like they have power. They do not. They are simply people that are constantly being told what to do from the United States or different countries so that they can continue to protect their own. We already know that this exists in Haiti, in addition to many other countries. What I want to talk about very quickly, because of the fact that I feel like sometimes we get so focused on history, we forget the humanity and how humanity can change things, how hope, how us coming together can actually still change things. When, I've mentioned this before, when you have to choose between eating and possibly going and trying to vote for something, it's really hard. You want to just eat. You don't know what it's like. The reason why so many people talk about the lack that exists, because that's really what's happening. Okay, let's call it what it is. There is lack in Haiti because everything has been stolen from us. There is lack in Haiti. The lack that exists is suffocating the hope that can thrive there. Do you understand? And so it's really hard to have hope when all you see every time you open your eyes is lack. When there's 80% of people that still going to school, people are walking to school still to get an education, knowing there's no job, knowing their president just got assassinated, knowing that the US is sending performative help when there isn't really any there. Let me tell you something. I have friends in the UN. They talk to the people all the time. They talk to the US about what needs to be happening often in Haiti. And what they're often told is the opposite. They place people there to look like, that's what I talk about, performative actions, performative power, look like they're trying to help Haiti. They'll send 1,000 and millions of nonprofit organizations that look like they are helping Haiti, but they're not listening to the people. They're not actually going to the people that need help. They're not actually listening to what they're asking for. Many people of Haiti are asking for electricity, like help. Like we don't need your stuff. We will build it. We will get it done. But they don't want that. They don't want to give us the power. They just want to give us what they feel like, well, like I mentioned before, semi-sustain us. Like, okay, all right, here's some more rice. Okay, here's some more clothes. Here's some more of this stuff. But when they're asking, hey, let's set up something so that when we have another earthquake, all of this won't be destroyed, the US is silent because the people know what they need. You know why they live there. They exist there every single day. And so I think it's really important that we remember that there's a lot of performative power happening, performative things happening in Haiti. And that is why the people there are losing hope. And the people here are trying to look like, well, what's wrong with Haiti? What's happening? It's really important that African Americans, I'm almost done. I know
30 seconds, we gotta move.
Thank you so much. I am an immigrant. I came here when I was 6 years old. Haiti was always the lowest of all the Caribbean countries that come here in the US that is treated specifically, to the point where they said that's where AIDS came from. We were treated so poorly. We were talked about so poorly for, I don't know why we have this negative thing on us, but I wanted to stop because Caribbean people all over have been helped by Haiti, including the United States. And I just need us to come together more and deal with this humane issue.
Hello, that's starvation. That's starvation living. When you have to meet your basic needs, which is everybody every single day, regardless if you want to eat or you don't want to eat, you biologically have to eat or you will die, and your body will constantly remind you, feed me, feed me, feed me, feed me, feed me, feed me. You cannot even concentrate without being well fed. It's been linked to affecting children's grades in public schools and schools in general. This is why it was important for the Black Panther Party to feed its community, which was implemented into public schools with free lunches. So if a person is so destitute or in such a destitute situation where they have to find food for that day, a meal, whatever a meal could be a legitimate meal, or a meal could be maybe a half a banana that someone threw out. And that's what you're going to eat for the rest of the day. How do you think about the next week? How do you think about your education, your housing, your dreams, your goals? You don't have time for that. You don't have the energy for that. Every day, every second is literal survival. So I don't want to rant too long because I'm good for that. Trust. But we really have to have a conversation amongst Black people, not just Uncle Tom and coonism and light skin versus dark skin. We need to have a serious conversation about what it means to be class conscious and race conscious and the intersectionalities between that. So we don't end up getting caught up in identity politics and cancer culture, this, that, and the third, when in reality, I know I'm somewhat conflating the two, but you're going to get me once I finish. Conflating the two and not understanding how that is used against us. Cancel culture originally was for the corporate heads to hold Target accountable. Remember when it was H&M, when they had that little Black boy dressed up as a monkey? That was the point of cancel culture. An everyday random Karen could be racist, could be racially insensitive. But guess what? Karen doesn't determine how much money you get paid an hour. She's a worker just like you are a worker. She's on the same class level as you. She may think she's on a higher level than you. But as you can see, a lot of people who thought they were afloat before Rona found out that no, they were just one situation away from losing it all. And a lot of people lost it all. And this is why class consciousness is coming back into fold, as well as worker communities, worker solidarity, worker unions, worker co-ops, union leaders and union workers coming together. Because now we understand we, the American people, are the working poor. We are the have-nots. And that's the same thing that needs to happen on a global scale. It's world domination. Amazon's not just in the United States, sweetie. It's global. So we are all subjugated. For example, in regards to how race policies and race politics are used against us, there's this big hoopla about writer friend, whatever. Long story short, there was these two women who worked at some type of publishing agency. One was full-blooded Caucasian. The other one was Caucasian and half Asian. Long story short, the Caucasian woman donated a kidney and she was bragging about how she did such a great job. The half Caucasian and half Asian woman felt that the Caucasian woman was just doing too much, bigging up on herself, looking for kudo points, just doing it just to brag. The half Asian and white woman, she took the white woman's kidney donation story and turn it into a semi nonfiction fiction novel, not really novel, but like some type of essay that got published, and the white woman who donated the kidney felt some type of way. So then things came out in the background that the half Asian, half Caucasian woman was actually talking ish about the Caucasian full-blooded woman, and they had a whole Facebook group making fun of her, whoop-de-whoop, in the Facebook private chats. So it became a hoopla for social media, and once again, social media fell for the obvious freaking trope, and they went with attacking the full-blooded Caucasian woman. And I'm gonna tell you why I am telling this story via racial category, right? Social media automatically assumed that the half Asian and half Caucasian woman had to be right, and she had a right to steal the story, steal the voice of the white woman who donated the kidney. And the reason why social media felt that way is because the Caucasian woman is Caucasian. And they assume that it was just a Karen getting in her feelings. You know how white people are. They overextend their relationships with non-white people. She's just jealous with you, right? Making excuses for exploitation, right? Because the exploiter is half Caucasian and half Asian. That Asian somehow others her from responsibility. And because she's Asian, she's half people of color. Now all of a sudden she's an innocent victim. But let's get deeper into the story. Let's get deeper into the background. The full-blooded Caucasian woman, she's actually poor. Or she came from like a struggling background. She don't have it like that. The half Asian and half Caucasian woman, she'd had multiple essays published before. Her stealing the kidney story wasn't her first published article. So she was somewhat well established, as well as she was already fixed within the writers community, and she had a well-to-do background. Now the dynamics kind of switches, huh? Now you see it in a class consciousness concept or perception that, half Asian, half Caucasian, use her powers, use her privilege, use her reach and identity politics to validate her stealing someone else's story, someone else's voice.
Like, do y'all not think the magnitude of how disrespectful that is? You don't like me. You created a Facebook chat about how much you don't like me with all the other coworkers that y'all smile in my face, but then kiki about me behind my back. And then poor little rich girl, privileged as F, steals my story that she can't stand so much, makes a profit off of it, and somehow, someway, I am the bad guy? Y'all need to rethink this whole solidarity thing, because y'all wrong. This Caucasian half Asian woman didn't need the publicity. She has been published before. But yet and still, she still had to steal the story from a person that she even admitted that she doesn't like. The privilege to take and steal with no regards to the person that you are victimizing is exactly why class consciousness needs to be a heavier discussion than racial politics. And we have no idea why this white woman, for whatever reason, it could have just really been on some like, I just want to help people who have medical issues and I want to be an organ donor. But it could also be like, money's tight and we never know what we are feeling to do to make ends meet. So we don't even know the nitty gritty of this Caucasian woman's why. But we already wrote her off because she's Caucasian. Remember that story not too long ago about that employee who gave her employer her kidney on some like, hey boss, I want you to survive. I want this company to survive. I'm going to take the plunge and give you a kidney. And then she ended up getting fired. Like, the fact that poor people have to put their bodies on the line to literally be the fuel, the oil that greases the engine for capitalists, for elites. We literally die. We literally sacrifice our bodies for these people. And because these people are a little bit of people of color, you suddenly don't see what's going on here. You suddenly don't see the bias. You suddenly don't see the classism. You suddenly don't see the oppression. You don't see that? And of course, like a true elitist who is comfortably associated with the powers that be, she doesn't face any consequences for stealing someone else's story. On some level, that's somewhat equivocal, not the same degree, but somewhere in there, to plagiarism. It's the same thing as plagiarism. If I, college years, went back to college, whatever class, and I somewhat coordinated my essay, my exam, my assignment to something that's already published, I'm screwed. That is grounds for me to be expelled. Like, that's grounds for me to lose my college education. But now in a free world, because half Asian, half Caucasian got connects, all of a sudden she could diddy walk F up out the building with publishing rights to your own story. If y'all don't get the f out of here, like Erykah Badu says, and she is trash ass on her position with R. Kelly, but we're not even going to get into that in this particular video. I'm trying to stay on topic as much as I can, and I've already went over time of what I wanted to say. But for all artists, and I quote, I am an artist. I'm sensitive about my shit. If you've never created content, you will not understand the sweat, tears, and consistency it takes to make something out of nothing and have the world see it and at best love it, acknowledge it, discourse about it. Y'all wouldn't know that. But those who are creatives do. And I am personally offended. And I have no ties to this story whatsoever. And I don't want to be that person. But I feel like I have to say it. God damn it. I wouldn't say the situation is reverse racism. But damn, you are towing the line with that position.
But because y'all have allowed the black bourgeoisies and just bourgeoisie classes in general, race traders, class traders, whatever traders you want to call them, you have allowed these people to speak for us, speak and tell us what our identity is, what our politics are, even our movements like hashtag Black Lives Matter, or even we the 99%. We have allowed these groups of people who look like us but have no class consciousness redefine what the agenda is, and next thing you know, Black Lives Matter is a hashtag funded by Nike. Ain't that right? We plus kneeling. Jay-Z, the choir director of the NFL, and now we is free now, right? We have to talk about these folks who look like us but don't think like us. Because until we resolve how we're going to deal with them folks, we're going to continue spinning in and out of Obamas and AOCs and Hillary Clintons and all these racial, gender, sexual identification policies and politics that keeps us spinning and ain't nothing getting done. So that's my commentary. Now let me know what you think. If the United States were to acknowledge that they have oppressed Haitians for throughout the centuries, honestly, that would mean that they would have to acknowledge all the other imperialistic and colonization tactics and terrorism that they have either funded or directly involved themselves in. To acknowledge Haiti's freedom would to be freeing the world. Because again, colonization, imperialism is global. These classes use race and racism to keep us, the workers, infighting while they dominate all of us. Whether we're talking about the racist hick from Alabama or we're talking about the most prestigious bourgeoisie Negro. If you're not sitting at those particular tables where geopolitics are being discussed and made, you don't really got the power the way that you think you have the power. So I'm not saying this in a way to like justify or excuse the United States. I'm saying this to say is that the reason why there is such carefully crafted image of Haiti and Haitians is because it allows people to look at Haiti and dismiss Haiti and not want to investigate as to why Haiti is the way that it is.
poorest or the poorest or the poorest, but there's never a real conversation about why we're the poorest. There's not a conversation about us having to pay France back. And who did we have to pay France back through? What bank was collecting the money? All these things that they keep out when they talk about these different things, and this idea of we're the poorest or the poorest, but then there's so much interest in Haiti. That's another thing you don't hear too much of. If we're so much, we're being discarded, no one cares, there's no real interest, send all the Haitians back, why is there so much interest? Why is there so much blockage? Why is there so much invasion? Why does the US need to be involved in everything that's going on in Haiti, from elections to like the funding? The funding gets to Haiti, but there's never really tracking system. There's no auditing of where does the money go? Who does it go to? What is done with the money when it's, when it gets to Haiti? These conversations don't happen because it's like these headlines read one way and people want to keep talking about the same things. And I want to tie that into what Savannah was saying, because this is a conversation that I realized throughout this whole migrant crisis thing people weren't talking about. And Savannah just brought it up about, you have these people that come into Haiti. There's no interest. They don't care about us, but they'll come in as peace, keepers and so on, which is how, the Chileans and Brazilians even started in Haiti, back in 2011, 12, 13 or so on. They come in, they build these relationships, and then they tell us they're our friend, and they make a way now for what Jimmy was saying, that now you're providing visas for these students to leave, to go to Chile and to leave Chile and go to Brazil and do all this work. They need us now. So it's like, yes, let's make a way. Let's give them, a way to come in, visas to do different things. Then once they don't need us anymore, we've already built stadiums and done all these other things. They just discard us. All of a sudden now you have children that was born in these countries. They don't have their birth certificates. They're not citizens of these countries where they were literally born and have never even been to Haiti. So then they're leaving because of all these different things going on. They get to these borders and they're just Haitian. That's it now. They're just Haitian. They don't have paperwork. They're not given any alien numbers or anything when they get to these borders. They're being deported, but there's no real system on who's being deported, why.
This is why it's important for us to stop calling these people migrants. They're not migrants. They are refugees. They are seeking asylum. They are being forced out of Haiti. They have no food. They have no water. They have no homes. They cannot go to school. They don't have cops that are regulating the areas where they live. They don't have running water. They don't have sanitation. They don't have Kotex pads. They don't have condoms. Like little things that you have every single day, these people don't have. And I know we're going to get into America and France and how other countries play into this later on, so I'm not going to get into that just yet. But these people are refugees. And it's very important that us, especially those of us who are pro-Black, especially those of us who are Black, those of us who are Haitian, that we stop calling them migrants. Because if you notice, the Biden administration, they keep saying that. They keep calling them migrants so that they won't have certain benefits, so that they will be easily deported. They don't want to take responsibility for all the bullshit that they've done in our country, in Haiti, for centuries. You know what I mean? So it's easy to say they're migrants. So get on the horse, use your rings, and whip them back into wherever they came from, because they don't belong here. Well, guess what? You actually owe us. You owe us asylum. And we'll get into that. But you owe us asylum. And that's why we cannot keep calling them migrants. They have to come here because they don't have anywhere else to go. They're knocking at all of these Hispanic countries. You know why? Because most Haitians speak Spanish. We know that Hispaniola was split into a sandwich. One side is DR, one side is Haiti. They speak Spanish. But to go even further than that, Haiti during our Civil War had great relationships with many Hispanic countries. And if you go to the Citadel, which I've gone to, you will see weapons that are still there that have signatures from Ecuador, Venezuela, Mexico, all of these places. Yes, Colombia, all of these places. Their flags are a representation of their relationship with Haiti. The world owes us asylum. Do you understand what I'm saying? So stop calling us migrants. We're not just leaving just because we want to leave. Yeah, that's not what our ancestors intended when we freed ourselves. We have to leave because y'all did this to us, and we'll get into that. But I just want to stress that they're not migrants. They are refugees. And just like we rolled out the red carpet for the people of Afghanistan, and much prayer to them, you know, we flew them out. They got flued out, right? Where's our flued out? Where is our red carpet for all the stuff that y'all have done to us? We're refugees. We need asylum too.
Thank you for that.
Everybody have figured out what we need. Everybody figures out what the country needs and what's supposed to happen, where our funding is supposed to go. A lot of the tables or decisions are being made for even local Haitian communities and nationwide, and even in Haiti. We're not part of the conversation, and that also is the problem. You have natural disasters and things that happens, and everybody else is making decisions for us. And you hear like all these other organizations are collecting funding, and they're telling us where everything is going to go, and they're telling us what the people in Haiti need, and no one's listening. A lot of us, like even a lot of Haitian Americans, are not educated enough on, one, the history of Haiti, which sometimes is the cause of why there's not enough pride in who we are. Yes. And the world is not educated on our history and our current condition, not just the history, but our current conditions and our current realities. So then when there are conversations where we need to be involved, we're not called on to. Everybody else is speaking for us. So in our communities and we're sitting together, we're like, this is what needs to be done. This is what we should be doing. Everybody else is saying this other thing needs to happen. And this is what you should be doing. And the government is making decisions on our behalf. And people are not calling on us enough. And it's not like we're not available. It's not like you can't find us, because when they need us, elections, press conferences, for, you know, photo ops and stuff, they know how to find us. But when we need to be part of the bigger conversation on how things need to happen for us, we're not called upon. All of a sudden you see it, you saw these other faces on CNN and all these other platforms speaking for us, and we're not there. We're not part of enough of the conversation. And I feel like a lot of us Haitian Americans, we're also not doing enough work to make sure that they are including us. There's enough of us worldwide to make sure we are included. And I think a lot of it has to do with, you guys were talking about it earlier, us being more united, being educated once, being educated, being more united, and also taking a collective stance when it needs to happen. Back to the Haitian migrant situation, when it first happened with Del Rio.
Under 30 seconds.
Okay, one of the key things that everybody was saying is this is what we needed to do to stop the deportation flights. Call Congress, do this and do that. A lot of people were doing the complete opposite of what the people that was telling us what needed to be done right away was happening. So then when all the people disappeared, we were like, oh my God, what happened? We weren't listening. People weren't listening. Everybody else did what they thought needed to be done. And once you started seeing these images of Haitians in Haiti, you're like, what happened? We weren't listening.
That's true. That is very, very true. I was confused too. I want to go to Flex, and then I want to go to Jesse. I see you, Omawale, and I think I saw you too, Savannah and Teresa.
Yeah, I think that Haitians have to take accountability as well, because we have performative influencers who will Karen Civil their way into Haitian causes, who will go into Haiti and put t-shirts on Haitian kids and have them pose with checks, knowing that they never gave them a dime, then go around and go on a press tour and tell the entire world, I gave Sow a Seed Foundation $41,000, knowing they never gave them a dime. I want that to stop. There's a lot of Haitian influencers who do it for the clicks, who do it for the PR, and you're just as bad as the government that we have back in the country who does the same thing. Just the other day, you had Ariel Henry sit with CNN and say, oh, they're just leaving the country because they see nicer other countries. You're gaslighting us, and you're putting us in further danger than we are already. So I want all that shit to be dead, period. Number two, this is a diaspora job. So the diaspora needs to educate themselves on the government, educate themselves on, first of all, as a diaspora, you should know who the mayor of your town is. You should know who the mayor of your town is. You should know what your town needs. You should know, does your town need a shelter? Does your town need water? Does your town need food? Are there restaurants? Are there grocery stores in your town? You should know that. If you don't know that, that is your homework. This is a diaspora job. And lastly, Haitians need our own voice, our own movement. And I kind of think that that's what Jimmy was alluding to, is that, yes, we are Black. Yes, we stand up for BLM. Yes, we stand up for all Black Lives Matter. But when we have a hashtag like Haitian Lives Matter, we're piggybacking off of someone else's movement. What is our movement? What is our voice? When are we going to connect to the youth that are in Haiti? I'm so happy that I see Savannah, and oh my God, I'm so emotional. But was it Joshua? Anthony. You know, I've been on so many calls the last 3 months, simply saying we need to connect with the youth in Haiti. Yeah. Haitians here and the youth and Haitians there. There needs to be a marriage. We can't just be marching here at the consulate and marching in DC. These motherfuckers don't give a fuck about us. Do you not see Joe Biden ripping off all the funding for black colleges? He does not give a fuck. We need to be down there marching for our country. We need to be at Palewa Yala pour nous dire ça qu'a passé. Dis-nous ça qu'a passé avec peuple nous, avec moun nou yo. And how do we help them? Point blank, period. We can't continue to be scared of our own country. They did that with every intention to scare our parents and to scare us. And if we don't go back home, there will not be a Haiti to go back to. If we don't go home, there will not be a Haiti to go back to. That is my biggest fear, that there will not be a Haiti to go back to if we don't go home. We have to go home.
Thank you,
That's my last point.
Because like I said originally, Hispaniola is basically Haiti and the Dominican Republic. It's one island. And from Hispaniola and these invaders coming to Hispaniola and terrorizing the Tejanos like Queen Ayacorona is how we got to modern day society. To acknowledge the terrorism that these white imperialists have caused Haiti is to acknowledge the exterminations of the Mayans, and it would be to acknowledge the extermination of the other native folks on U.S. soil. It would be to acknowledge the terrorism that the United States has imported across the country, whether we're talking about the Middle East, whether we're talking about Vietnam, go home, black man, this is not your war. To acknowledge what these imperialist countries have done to Haiti would be literally to open Pandora's box.
For the imperialist conquer class to recognize and address the Pandora's box that is Haiti, because again, before Christopher Columbus sailed the ocean blue to America, he landed on Hispaniola first and foremost. So again, Haiti is at the centerfold of everything. Just like the first black nation to get its freedom was the first black nation to be subjugated, right? To address the maliciousness and the evilness of imperialism, of colonization. How could they atone their actions against our ancestors, right? How do you put a dollar amount to state-sanctioned violence, global oppression that to this day they profit off of? To atone would be reparations. But again, how do you put a dollar amount on global supremacy, colonization, imperialism, racism, extermination, subjugation, genocide, death of culture, people, language, land, and beyond? You cannot. The only solution is anarchy. But that is a discussion for another video. You did not come to see that. But the solution would truly to be anarchy. Burn this shit to the ground.